behavioral therapy has subsumed all before it, not even Buddhism being safe from its rapacious clutches. As Aaron Beck is reported to have said, if it works, it's CBT. And in various recent reports on the evidence base for personal construct psychotherapy in reviews of the psychotherapy research literature, it's therefore perhaps no surprise to find it classified as a form of CBT. One wonders if such developments in the years since her address to the 1977 Congress increased Fay's vigilance to the dangers of PCP being subsumed and sinking without trace. The issue was still clearly of concern to her at the International Congress 22 years later, when in speculating on personal construct psychology in the year 2045, she said, "Why integrate to some common approach that will swamp one of the most powerful and useful psychological theories ever created?" And she even allowed herself to speculate that perhaps it will become the mainstream psychology taught and practiced around the world. Paradoxically, the structure and security provided by PCP as a way of life gives the freedom at a more subordinate level to opt for extension of one's system rather than definition, for adventure, and for experimentation with alternative constructions. As with various other leading personal construct psychologists, Fay showed ample examples of this in both her professional and personal life, including the courageous decision to take early retirement from a successful academic career in order to set up a private centre for personal construct psychology. She certainly exemplified Kelly's assertion that one need never become a victim of one's biography. A biography which in her case included the early death of her mother, evacuation from the Channel Islands prior to the German invasion, and having to leave school early because she was not considered bright enough. Nor did she ever lose her spirit of adventure, learning to fly a gypsy moth aeroplane as a young woman and taking a yachtmaster's course much later in life. But just as in her description of Kelly's passionate commitment to commitment, Fay will best be remembered for her passionate commitment to the theory to which she devoted her life. As one of my students said to me after Fay had given yet another inspiring talk on PCP, on the course which I direct. This is when she was in her early 80s, and the student said to me, "She's really marvellous, you know, for someone who must be nearly 60. I can't think of a more fitting tribute to end the presentation. A bit of help.
This isn't it, right? That looks right to me. No, this is not yours. I'm sorry, okay, so why don't we close this one? Yeah, that's what we need to do. Okay. All right, very good, very good. Okay. So, this is what I help.
Full screen.
Like David, I feel that the most striking thing about Fay's way of living was how well it meshed with the theory that she espoused. Which came first, the way of living or the adoption of the theory? In a 1999 interview, she indicates that she found an extraordinary match between her pre-existing way of living and the theory, in that, she says, it made sense to everything I knew about me. Nowhere was this relationship more apparent than in her experiment of founding the Centre for Personal Construct Psychology. In preparing this paper, I was concerned to respect Fay's privacy, which she seemed to value highly. An unexpected consequence of this was that I found myself writing more about myself than I anticipated. But many people's lives were changed through direct contact with Fay and her creation, the Centre for Personal Construct Psychology. What happened to me is but one example. Fay set up the Centre between 1980 and 1982. She had been doing research and teaching at the University of London and had been conducting introductory courses and then an advanced course in her home. The Centre became a business in November 1980. The work of organising its activities initially was undertaken by Peggy Dalton. Fay took early retirement from the university after the Centre became a physical entity. A house was acquired in a central part of London using the bottom 2 floors for the Centre, while she and her husband Roy lived above. This picture is taken from the opening of the Centre. On the left is Gavin Dunnett, Cassie Cooper, Peggy Dalton, Fay, Don Bannister and Helen Jones. Her aim for the Centre was expressed as giving PCP to anyone who wants it. She indicated that she had no blueprint, no grand design for what the Centre would be. Instead, she saw it as self-creating. She said personal construct psychology would not lie down. It would keep actively elaborating itself until such time as something had to be done to give it a helping hand to develop into whatever it wished to be. In this, she saw Kellyan aggression as central to both the Centre's establishment as well as its future. For those unfamiliar with this aspect of the theory, Kelly writes about aggression as the active elaboration of one's construing system, which has far more positive connotations than its everyday meaning. Providing courses, as well as offering counselling and psychotherapy services, were the initial focus of the Centre. The range of backgrounds of the participants was very broad. Psychologists, certainly, counsellors, speech and occupational therapists, organisational strategists, managerial executives and consultants, medical practitioners, artists, art and music therapists, and many more. Introductory courses were run in different forms. Advanced units were available on completion of the introduction, and those units ultimately contributed to a diploma course involving research and therapy supervision. As to the content, during the time I was involved, the focus was very much on what Kelly himself wrote, especially in the introductory courses. An important area of content also came from the work of Dennis Hinkle, which Fay had found very useful for her PhD, with methodologies like laddering, resistance to change, and implication grids, as well as his theory of implications being included. This is Denny at the time that he visited Fay and the British psychologists. When he was aged about in his early 30s. Peggy Dalton introduced her particular interest in non-verbal construing, including the work of Tom Ravenette, regulatory grids were discussed, but they were by no means the primary focus at that time.